Welcome again to the Death Row and Executions channel. I'm Paco Rivera. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more Death Row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. There are two executions scheduled for November the 16th of this year. One is Casey McWhorter in Alabama. A video on him will appear on this channel next Friday. The other execution scheduled for November 16 is that of David Santiago Renteria in Texas, which is the case that I will be going over today. These cases are always the hardest to discuss. Yet another precious, innocent little angel brutalized and taken from this world by an evil monster. Yet another sad, tragic, and heartbreaking story. This time, the girl was just 5 years old. Her name is Alexandra Flores, who was snatched from a local Walmart store in El Paso, Texas, while she was looking at toys in the toy aisle of that store in November of the year 2001. 9 years earlier, in the year 1992, David Santiago Renteria was convicted for indecency with a child. He was arrested, and the victim later testified that Renteria molested her when she was 7 years old. Renteria pled guilty and was placed on deferred adjudication probation for 10 years. Why do these people get released back into the general population like that? How often do we hear that they have done it again? Most are just going to do it again, it seems, doesn't it? By the way, I recently posted in my Facebook a report on how the state of Florida now allows the death penalty for child rapists. There doesn't have to be a murder. I would like to ask you all to have a look at it and get your thoughts on that new law. So David Renteria was registered as a sexual offender in Texas and eventually released back into the general population under certain conditions. He was not allowed to have close contact with children and not allowed to live or work near a school. It was November 18th of the year 2001, just a couple months after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and just a few weeks before Christmas. During the early evening hours, Jaime and Sandra Flores arrived at Walmart in the El Paso area to do some shopping along with their children. At one point, the youngest of Jaime and Sandra's 8 children, Alexandra Flores, who was just 5 years old, asked her parents if she can go look at the toys. The mother then instructed her 8-year-old son to go with her and keep an eye on her. But as children will do, they eventually separated and wandered off in separate directions. And little Alexandra can be seen on security surveillance cameras browsing around the toy aisle by herself. What was also viewed later on that surveillance footage was a man wearing a white cap pushing an empty shopping cart around the store. It was later learned that he had been pushing that cart around the store for the past 40 minutes, quite some time before the Flores family had gotten there. And he would later leave the store after 40 minutes having bought nothing. What was he shopping for? Surveillance footage shows that man entering the toy aisle and following little Alexandra throughout the area. The next thing we see, which is almost shocking and is heartbreaking to watch, was little Alexandra in her red dress following closely behind the strange man in the white hat through the store and then out the store into the parking lot. That man in the white hat would later be identified as convicted child predator and sex offender David Santiago Renteria. Now, we don't know for sure exactly what Renteria said to Alexandra to lure her out of the store. Maybe he promised to give her a toy or candy or a puppy dog once outside. During an interrogation after Renteria was captured, he said that he told Alexandra that her parents were outside the store waiting for her, that he is a good friend of her father's, and he was asked to go inside to go get her. And she believed him and followed him out of the store. Keep in mind now that while Renteria admitted to luring Alexandra out of the store, he'd said that once they were outside, some Azteca gang members grabbed her, put her in a car, and drove away, and that he never saw the little girl again. Renteria, if I'm not mistaken, to this day denies abducting or killing Alexandra. We'll get a little more into that story a bit later on. When Jaime and Sandra Flores began gathering all their children together, they realized that Alexandra was missing. The family searched the entire store, including restrooms. Now in a panic, the family alerted Walmart staff and a complete search of the store was done. Back rooms, the parking lot, and surrounding areas of the store were all checked. When Alexandra was not found, police were notified. Police combed the surrounding neighborhoods looking for the little girl. El Paso investigators were questioning staff and reviewing surveillance footage from Walmart security cameras. And when the media got wind of the missing 5-year-old, they also arrived at the store to broadcast the events for the 10 o'clock news, while showing a picture of the missing girl. The distraught mother, Sandra, was also televised, pleading to the community to help her find Alexandra.
We miss you. When you home, baby. Come home, baby.
Investigators reviewing security camera footage watched in horror as a man in a white hat was seen following Alexandra around in the store's toy aisle, and then Alexandra following closely behind him out into the parking lot. Unfortunately, that Walmart's security camera system in the year 2001 was not of very good quality. The images were grainy and there wasn't a good shot of the man's face. Investigators worked through the night in search of Alexandra, a search that included questioning registered sex offenders that lived in the area. Early the following morning, an employee for a doctor's office about 16 miles away from the Walmart arrived at a parking garage in the rear of a medical office building and parked her car. Soon after stepping out, she spotted a horrific scene. The completely nude body of a little girl lying on the ground up against the wall of the parking garage. The body had a plastic bag over her head and she appeared to be partially burned, as if someone tried to set the body on fire to destroy evidence and then fled. But the fire fizzled out. Investigators positively identified the body of that of little Alexandra Flores. They were now looking for a killer. The medical examiner reported that Alexandra was struck on both sides of her head with a heavy object, but that what ultimately killed her was being manually strangled with someone's hands. The medical examiner also said that there was no sign of sexual abuse to the body, and that the body was burned after she was dead. Detectives theorized that Alexandra was killed somewhere else and then dumped in the parking garage. The clothing that she wore has never been recovered, obviously discarded by the killer as a means to further destroy evidence. And although the medical examiner found no signs of rape, detectives believed that the abduction was sexually motivated. In the following days, investigators continued questioning registered sex offenders and staff at the Walmart store. That Walmart also has security guards patrolling the parking lot in their security vehicles, and police got their first big break when a security guard was questioned. She said that on the day of the abduction, she did spot something kind of odd. There was a van in the parking lot with its motor running. She looked inside and there was nobody in there. The security guard said she waited around near the van for about 15 minutes, but the owner never returned. So this alert security guard wrote down a description of the van in her notes and the license plate number before she continued her duties. A detective decided to go ahead and run the license plate number, and it came back to a man named David Santiago Renteria, who happens to be a registered sex offender and who about this time was celebrating his 32nd birthday. Detectives wondered if this was more than a coincidence. A van left running in a Walmart parking lot by a sex offender on the evening that a little girl went missing. David Renteria immediately became a person of interest. Investigators got their second big break when a crime scene technician was able to lift a palm print from the plastic bag that was covering Alexandra's head. The first person that the detectives wanted to match it against was the prints on file for David Renteria, and it was positively concluded as a perfect match. The hunt for David Santiago Renteria was on. Exactly 2 weeks after the murder of little Alexandra Flores, police learned that Renteria was working at a Lowe's store in El Paso. They watched as he helped some customers load merchandise into a parked car, and then descended on him there in the parking lot and took him down. His van was taken to a crime lab for forensic processing. Once inside a small room, David Renteria was questioned. At first, he denied everything. He said he never saw that little girl. When presented with evidence of his van left running in the Walmart parking lot and security camera footage of him following little Alexandra Flores around the toy aisle, he said that he left his car running because the van was having problems with the starter and he was having a problem getting it started. He then admitted to luring the little girl out of the store. Now, here is the story that David Renteria gave to the detective. He said that in recent years he has received protection from a gang called the Aztecas. While he was shopping around the store, he said that a gang member just so happened to be there and approached him. The Azteca gang member told him, "You see that little girl over there? Her father owes us a lot of money for drugs, and we want to teach him a lesson. You owe us for the protection we've been giving you," the gang member said. "I want you to go get that little girl, take her outside, and we'll take care of the rest." Renteria said that he lured the little girl outside and walked her deep into the parking lot. A car with Azteca gang members stopped and picked up the girl and drove away, and he never saw the little girl again after that. But here is the problem with that story. How did his palm print end up on the plastic bag that covered the head of a deceased little girl whose nude body was dumped and set on fire? Did he also give the gang member a plastic bag when they took the girl? Investigators know that Jaime Flores was not involved in any drug activity, making Renteria's story ridiculous. And then investigators got word from the crime lab processing Renteria's van that blood was found inside the van, and DNA testing proved it to be Alexandra Flores' blood, pretty much debunking Renteria's story and putting the final nail in his coffin. David Renteria can only hang his head down low in shame to avoid the media's cameras. Shame that he was caught. Little Alexandra had attended Loya Primary School near El Paso as a pre-kindergarten student. According to friends and family, she was a sweet, darling little angel of this world who was taken from us way too soon. The chief of police at the time of her murder, Carlos Leon, has stated that the people throughout the regions of El Paso are a very closely tight-knit community that helps each other out, that looks out for each other. Residents don't see each other as neighbors. They see each other as family. When the people of El Paso learned of the abduction and murder of Alexandra Flores, it broke their hearts. And everyone, it seemed, stepped in to help out the family in any way they could. By the year 2008, Alexandra Flores Park, located near the school that Alexandra had attended as a pre-K student, was dedicated in her memory. Please remember to subscribe for more death row and upcoming execution stories. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more death row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. I'm Paco Rivera. Bye for now.